In this lecture, we are going to first look at what is object-oriented programming. Now, historically, there have been two major paradigms of programming. One of them is called procedural, and the older languages which you have heard of, like COBOL, C, Pascal, they all come under this paradigm. In modern languages like Java, Python, C Sharp, we have a new kind of programming paradigm which is called as object-oriented programming, and it is mostly used and most of the famous programming paradigms that is in use right now. Now let's first understand what is procedural programming. In case of a procedural programming, we have a series of instructions to achieve a specific result. Okay, so say for example you have to do some job, okay, using this programming languages. So you would have a series of set of instructions that would get you there. So they are just kind of shown as a steps and a series of instructions given to achieve a specific result. Now, this kind of programming leads to multiple functions, multiple variables scattered all around the program. And these all functions operate on these variables and they are intricately interlinked also with each other. This kind of programming leads to a very like a lot of a messy kind of a code, wherein if you have a change in one function or parameter, then it kinds of breaks your entire program and it affects many other functions along with it. So changing even a very small part of the program would actually involve or would let you change almost all the other functions which are dependent on that specific change. So that's the reason this kind of programming paradigm is slowly become obsolete. To replace this paradigm, we now have object-oriented programming. To understand it in a very simple layman's term, the goal of this programming paradigm is to model the real world objects in programming itself. And what are objects? They are nothing but what we see in our day-to-day life. They can be anything from a machine, they can be an animal or your favorite pet, or it can be a car, or it can be anything that you see around yourself. So this kind of programming paradigm tries to model the real world objects around you in form of the programming itself. Now in case of object oriented programming, similar functions and parameters are grouped together as a single unit that you are seeing over here. And this single unit is nothing but an object. This object can be anything starting from a car, it can be anything from an animal, it can be any object or things like that. And in object oriented programming, these objects talk with each other. The advantage of this kind of programming is that there the similar functions and similar variables are part of a single unit itself. So if you have to change any specific part of your program, the change would be there only in that specific unit. It would not be spilled over to other units as is the case with procedural programming. So the key points to remember over here is that procedural programming is a step-by-step approach in programming wherein there are series of instructions that are given to achieve a specific result. There is no specific stress on how the data is organized. However, the stress is more on what are the functions and what are the instructions required to do a specific job. We saw that in object-oriented programming, the stress is more on how we can organize the data in form of objects in the programming, and these objects are supposed to hold the similar functionality, the similar variables, the similar parameters within itself. So that if there is a change in any one of these parameters, it becomes very easy to do that in object-oriented programming instead of instructions, which is the case with procedural programming. We also learnt that objects can be anything that you see in your real world, and you can model them in your program using object-oriented programming. Objects can be animals, objects can be human beings, objects can be machines, car, it can be a glass of water, it can be anything that you see in the world. And the power of this programming paradigm is that you can model your real world in your programming itself, which was not possible in case of procedural programming. In the next lecture, we are going to look into detail in some of these concepts like what are objects, what are classes. So just hang on.